Hello, and welcome to my final assignment and presentation on generalized anxiety disorder, also referred to as GAD or GAD. I am Tim Hummel. I am a first-year student at Kirkwood Community College and am enrolled in Intro to Psychology, led by Dr. Kona Brawl. In today's presentation, we'll be touching on the topics listed here related to generalized anxiety disorder. That would include what is generalized anxiety disorder or GAD? What are the symptoms, causes, statistics related to GAD? Also, what are the treatment options available? Additionally, I've included a slide indicating the references of where I gathered my information for the presentation today. Okay, here we go. What is GAD or generalized anxiety disorder? Generalized anxiety disorder is described as unrestrained and constant worry that one cannot control. Typically, this would have lasted continuously for at least 6 months. The worry being experienced is out of proportion and compared to the actual event of focus for the person with GAD. And the worry being experienced may actually be interfering with daily activities. So let's go into discussing the actual symptoms of generalized anxiety disorder. Now, let's go through the points related to the symptoms of generalized anxiety disorder. We have assuming worst case scenarios to situations and ruminating or overthinking on solutions to resolve, constantly perceiving normal life events as threatening when they may not be, intensive fear of making the wrong decision. Handling uncertainty is also overwhelming for someone with generalized anxiety disorder. Additionally, somebody with GAD would have an inability to relax and would constantly feel on edge. Let me provide an example that would relate and maybe expand upon the symptom descriptions here on this page. An example might be, let's say someone with GAD was 5 minutes late getting home from work for dinner, and their spouse was very, very mildly annoyed, but certainly not angry. This might trigger someone with GAD to go down a rabbit hole, believing their spouse is angrier than they present. And the person with GAD would then catastrophize the situation, maybe even to the point of worrying their spouse was going to file for divorce or their spouse was going to somehow retaliate against them simply for being late to dinner. This type of response would be considered way out of proportion in relation to the event that had just occurred. Additionally, for somebody with GAD, their obsessive worrying may impact other daily responsibilities. For instance, the person we are describing as an example may go to work the next day and not be able to focus on their professional responsibilities because they are still obsessively worried about the interaction at dinner the night before. This person would or may be paralyzed with worry. They may not be able to function properly and complete their work tasks. Clearly, for somebody with GAD in this mindset or mind frame, they would not be able to relax because they'd be so keyed up from the anxiety of worry. So, what does it feel like having generalized anxiety disorder or GAD or GAD? Well, in addition to the symptoms we just described, there are physical manifestations of generalized anxiety disorder that could also be present during a time of acute anxiety. This might include increased heart rate, shallow and rapid breathing, which could lead to hyperventilating depending on how acute the anxiety is for the person. This may also involve excessive perspiration without exertion. So that would mean sweating without exercising or moving, if you will. It may also involve dry mouth, which could cause trouble swallowing. Additionally, insomnia is also a key component to somebody with acute generalized anxiety disorder. Because of all of these physical manifestations occurring, this person may feel very exhausted and fatigued. They're not getting enough sleep because their body and their mind are on overdrive. So, what are the causes of generalized anxiety disorder? There are several potential causes to generalized anxiety disorder, including chemical imbalances, brain changes, genetics, and environmental factors. Some folks with generalized anxiety disorder, chemical imbalances can contribute to the disorder. These include imbalances related to neurotransmitters, hormones, norepinephrine, serotonin, dopamine, and gamma aminobutyric acid. Another associated cause is related to changes in the brain. The amygdala plays a vital role in managing anxiety and fear, and research has shown increased amygdala activity has been noted in people with anxiety disorders and responding to anxiety cues. Furthermore, one's own genetics can play an inherent role in GAD. Anxiety disorders are often familial. This means that somebody with generalized anxiety disorder likely has a direct relative. This would be a parent, specifically a biological parent, who also likely has the same disorder. They could also have a sibling, maybe even a grandparent. Finally, environmental factors can play a key part in triggering generalized anxiety disorder. Sustaining copious amounts of stress over an extended period of time can contribute to GAD. Also, a cataclysmic life event can trigger an anxiety disorder. Additionally, as mentioned here, extended stress can change the balance of neurons that assist in controlling the mood. You might be asking, how prevalent is generalized anxiety disorder at this point in our discussion? Here are some general statistics I'd like to share with you today. First of all, there is an estimated 300 million people globally who experience or have experienced symptoms related to generalized anxiety disorder in their lifetime. Now, let's look at what some of the statistics tell us about the US. Here, if you look at the left-hand column, GAD impacts 6.8 million adults in the United States, 3.1% of the US adult population. Average adult GAD patients first seek treatment between 20 and 30 years old. Additionally, most common anxiety disorder for people over 65 is actually GAD or generalized anxiety disorder. That doesn't mean that it only impacts that age group. As you know, at this point in our presentation, it impacts all age groups. Another interesting piece of information that stands out is that women are twice as likely to experience GAD than men. It's noted that hormonal changes associated with women are thought to contribute to higher rates of GAD. In addition to puberty, which nearly all people go through, women also may experience things like hormonal changes related to menstrual cycles, pregnancy and postpartum, and menopause. Well, obviously, not all women develop generalized anxiety disorder due to additional hormonal changes. Researchers have noted this as a possible contributor. An additional important statistic I'd like to call out is that GAD is unlikely to occur alone. It's usually associated with another mental health issue, also a comorbidity. Um, 50 to 90% of people with GAD also have one other mental health issue This might be a phobia, depression, or a substance abuse issue. Research has shown that various neurobiological irregularities are associated with the development of anxiety and can also possibly account for the comorbidities. So, what are treatment options available for folks with generalized anxiety disorder? For someone suffering with generalized anxiety disorder, seeking professional treatment would certainly be a first step. Developing a trusting relationship with a therapist or psychologist would be beneficial and beginning to understand how to manage their symptoms. Additionally, they may be referred to a psychiatrist for appropriate medication if needed, as a measure of additional ways of managing symptoms. This might include an antidepressant, also known as an SSRI, or possibly anti anxiety medication, also known as benzodiazepines. In conjunction with professional therapeutic measures, one should also treat their bodies and minds kindly, eating healthy foods, exercising, not smoking, and not engaging in destructive behaviors such as excessive alcohol and drug use. Furthermore, having a practice of meditation and relaxation techniques is also helpful in managing the symptoms related to generalized anxiety disorder. This might include things like yoga or massage. In closing, there are ways to manage generalized anxiety disorder, and one should not feel alone nor helpless in their recovery process. I've listed the sources of the material I presented today here in this section of my presentation. I'd like to call out these renowned institutions, including the American Psychiatric Association, the National Institute of Mental Health, the Mayo Clinic, the Cleveland Clinic, the Anxiety and Depression Association of America, the World Health Organization, the National Library of Medicine, and the Harvard Health Publishing Group. To thank you again for taking the time to engage in my presentation today, and please feel free to reach out with any questions.